Okay, just like to check if I'm audible. Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not very often that you get welcomed to the stage by the likes of Shraddha Kapoor, somewhere there. Okay, so it's been absolutely a pleasant experience. I know she has said something about the background. We'll discuss it later, probably over a cup of coffee. Today, before we start, I think if you can stop the timer, if it's okay. Otherwise, I'd like to just share a very quick, input for Exito and probably for you, Shraddha. Getting people inside the hall. I mean, when I took over this particular organization, one of the first things that came my way was to organize something called Aadhaar Samvad in Mumbai at the Geo World Convention Center. The problem facing was that previously, in the previous edition that we had done in Bangalore, the front seats with all the dignitaries and named the who's and who's, Mr. Nandan Nilekani and Mr. Mishra, everybody, the first couple of rows were all filled. The behind, the 600 odd seats by invite, they were all in the the breakfast area. So this was not supposed to happen for Mumbai. So I just recently taken over and we were pondering over it. So we came across a slightly novel solution. We said, we will serve you at the table. Okay, it just made our job a little more expensive, I would say, but it's looked much better. The plates were already put, they were neatly covered. They were, they had their forks and spoons, they had their water. The coffee was being served on the table. Everything outside was locked. Very beautifully looking items, but locked and kept. You had to come inside to pick up your plate. You could try it out next time. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure, an honor for me to be present here. You will realize the background is different. She's already told you. And I feel that different background at times is an advantage, and that's what I've seen for the last couple of years. It gives me a different perspective to everything that I see. I'm able to ask a few questions, sometimes which are unsettling, but at the same time, sometimes things that we have been able to evolve from there are fantastic. Having said that, today's topic, it says Architecting India's BFSI for 2030. The thought leaders, the tech innovators, the leaders of the industry are present in the room. I have, in some measure, exposed how I want to approach it in the first slide itself. It says very clearly how, what regulations, then finally what we want to actually come to. It's a term that somewhere down the line in the entire, high-powered words that both the powerful ladies before me have used, we have one thing that we have missed out, and that is called trust. And that is something, possibly because of my different background, I would like to touch upon a little more. Let's look at it from a very, very casual, I would say very informal perspective today. I don't know for you, but for most of us, when we travel from one place to the other, the first thing that we do is we look or we open an app which tells us the route, right? I had to do it for coming here today. Fine. In the background, what happens is that within seconds, the satellites, the telecom networks, the cloud platforms, the algorithms, everybody works. You get a route. You never question. You just believe it, right? There are times when I've gone into a ditch. Yes, it's happened. But that was part of I think, the building of the architecture and the building of the trust that was happening over a period of time. Today, it doesn't. Similarly, let's look at electricity, Mumbai especially. You flip the switch, there's electricity. Do we actually ever think about the grid? No. It's a given. I don't want to go further, but yes, look at internet. Thousands of messages, hundreds of things happening across undersea cables, networks, routers. Do we ever think about the cable that brought the message to me? No. It's an infrastructure which is there. It is there. I mean, I don't even think about it. So across the three things that I've given you as infrastructure, that is navigation, electricity, and internet, if you look at it, there is one shared quality, and that is reliability, not visibility. I'll say again, reliability. And that is where I want to start, gentlemen, and that is the infrastructure that I would like to present to you and ask you to set a target. This is what the financial services must aspire, that this is the standard they must reach in visibility. Okay. Okay, sorry. It'll take a little while for me to figure out the switches. Okay, so if you notice from digital, as far as the journey of the digital infrastructure is concerned, it has grown from basic physical infrastructure to digital to intelligent infrastructure, and today what we call, or rather what I propose in some sense, is something called the trust infrastructure. Let's all today ask ourselves, when we are creating our infrastructure or a solution, is trust still the value that we aspire to? Or it is something that we look at more seriously and something that we try and design and build and operate in every solution that we work on? That's just a simple question for you to consider. I would say the world has seen 7 major resets, all of which have had some impact or the other on the financial history and the financial architecture as we see it today. Let's look at it. Y2K, it taught us resilience. Internet, it taught us interoperability. Swift taught us standardization. Cloud taught us agility. COVID, continuity. Artificial intelligence today is teaching us about governance. And the post-quantum era is something that we still don't know, but yes, it is something to do with foresight, something that we need to plan for. Each of these, if you look at it, initially probably looked as a technology. But in hindsight today, all of them were architectural changes. Hence, let's ask ourselves today, when today we are building something for ourselves, how do we see it? Do we look at it as a transformation technology, or do we look at it as an architecture that we will leave behind? That is basically a moot question for all of us. Okay, all of them have something in common. As I said earlier, every technology in hindsight finally appeared to be an architecture question. I feel that the next era of transformation will not be defined simply by faster technologies or sophisticated algorithms. It will be defined by something we call the trusted architecture. An architecture that integrates identity, security, interoperability, governance, and resilience into a coherent whole. Let's look at another important question. What should the architecture of a trusted financial ecosystem actually look like? I think this points us towards India's DPI. Let's look at it. It offers some very wonderful lessons. Also, let's look at the world. Different countries looked at their problems differently and they pursued their digital transformation goals differently. Some looked at it as marketed innovation. Others focused on sector-specific modernization. Each approach had its own institutional context, its regulatory philosophy, and most importantly, its economic priorities. India, rather than digitizing individual services in isolation, developed something called interoperable DPI. Components which provide not just public delivery, but also private innovation. While each component has its own governance and policy objectives, together They demonstrate that how shared digital rails can reduce friction, expand access, and most importantly, enable innovation at population scale. It's important to recognize that these components were not built simultaneously, nor were they designed as a single monolithic structure. They evolved one at a time to address a specific challenge. Yet when you view them collectively, they illustrate an architectural approach. And that is the lesson that India's DPI gives you. Taking it a little further, so we have 5 rails. What are these 5 rails? Aadhaar. It defines and provides the common identity rail around it, which the 4 interoperable rails run. UPI for payments. UPI today, gentlemen, is not just a rail. It is a part of brand India. It is something that we export. Just in the month of January, as a part of statistics, and luckily the timer is not running, so fine. So just as part of statistics, just in the month of January, we did 29 billion transactions. I mean, that is the number. It may be just 1 rupee or 10 rupees, does it make a difference? 49% of digital transactions today in the world happen in India. That is the benchmark that we set with respect to the scale. Account aggregators network, they are the ones that handle the consent-based data. ONDC is used for commerce, Bima Sugam for insurance. And let us ask ourselves a very simple question. In a normal circumstances, how many apps, logins, verification would it normally have to take earlier if we had to buy or pay for an insurance? Today, it's all done against a single architecture. And that, gentlemen, is real innovation and not the technology. It is the architecture that allows us to integrate identity, payments, consent, commerce, and insurance in an interoperable system. Okay. There is also a broader lesson that we would like to take from here, which is, whilst the public infrastructure provides the common foundation, it is the private innovation that creates differentiated value. And I think that is where the success of DPI has been, that we have allowed a level playing field for the industry and the leaders like you to innovate, to think beyond the box. Whilst we do have a complaint, which I say it very often, there are a lot of sandboxes that the tech department of ours has made available. The industry participation, whether it is in the tech boxes or the sandboxes, or for that matter, the SITA innovation program that we have launched, the participation is less. Today, with the kind of data bank that we have, we should be at the forefront, the leaders of setting standards for biometrics. That is not the case. And that is because there is a need for you to participate, play with the data, innovate, get back to us and tell us what needs to be reset. And that is where the industry participation is what we really exhort you to. Have a look at it, participate. What India did basically is it looked at the whole thing not just as a digital, digitization program. It looked at it as a program that will reduce friction and increase trust. And this is where I would like to propose a small framework, which I personally call something called the trust framework. And this is probably what it looks like. I hope it's not that confusing. It took the hell out of me to read out. Okay. So if you look at it, it is the trust infrastructure. It's built ground up in first 5 layers. Layer 1 is identity. Layer 2 is authentication. Confirming genuine presence. Layer 3 is consent. It is permission, not assumption. Layer 4 is data, governed, not merely possessed. Layer 5 is transaction. This is where the trust finally becomes observable. Notice the sequence. You govern data. You've got consent for. I'll say it again. You govern data, you have consent for. You cannot obtain consent without authenticating the person. And you cannot authenticate someone without first establishing their identity. That is why a single weak point, a stolen SIM, a spoofed biometric never stays contained. It cascades upward through every layer above it. The next 5 layers of this foundation, layer 6 is commerce, interoperability, layer 7 is intelligence, trustworthy, layer 8 is compliance, embedded and not appended, layer 9 is resilience, absorbing change, and layer 10 is trust. Please notice, trust is not where the architecture begins, it is where it arrives. Okay, earlier we always had this question, how do we build systems that work? I believe the questions have changed. Today, the question is, how do we build systems that people, institutions, and society can actually trust? That single shift from function to trust is, in my view, the defining architectural challenge of the decade. Blueprint, I mean, you are the leaders, the tech innovators. What can I really tell you? But let's look at it from the way we see it. So we look at it as 5 principles. The 5 principles are these. Platforms. We design platforms, not projects. Projects will solve problems of today. A project will solve problems of today. The platform is what will solve problems of tomorrow and after that. Similarly, compliance by design. We build governance into the first line of the code, not as an audit fix. Principle 3 is interoperability. Build for connected excellence. No institution, however large, builds trust alone. We have shown it to you as part of DPI. Trust is built across institutions. It is built one transaction at a time, one individual at a time, one institution at a time. It's only when everybody operates together that the trust gets built up. Resilience. We must always build resilience before we go for scale. Let's look at it and ask a simple question. Today, or rather tomorrow, if this particular project had to scale up 10 times, would it still run? If the answer is no, let's not look at developing of a new feature. Let's first invest in making this thing work at scale. 5 is trust, and trust is always before intelligence. Every institution here is probably racing to develop AI and deploy AI. But really, ask yourself, is an intelligent system that is not trusted, will it be adopted? However it's capable. Ask yourself. So across, we have 5 principles, 1 blueprint, platforms, compliance by design, interoperability, resilience, and trust before intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, every generation inherits infrastructure. Very few generations are given the opportunity to redefine infrastructure upon which the future will depend. I believe ours is that generation. We have inherited roads, electricity, etc. But today, we are at a junction. The choices that we'll make in the next 5 years will determine and influence how citizens authenticate their identity, how business exchanges value, how governments deliver services, and how artificial intelligence supports financial decisions. This responsibility is beyond technology. It's about stewardship. Today, we are not just helping define the relationship between technology, governance, and society. We are building strategic digital platforms, and more importantly, we are building national capability. And that is the sense of responsibility, gentlemen, that I would expect you to build your solutions with. Okay, to conclude, gentlemen, allow me to leave you with one final thought. History rarely remembers individual application or projects. It remembers infrastructure. It remembers the roads that connected nations. It remembers railways that transformed economies. It will remember electricity, the way it powered our industries. The financial infrastructure that we are building today and we will design today has the potential to be just that, foundational. If you build it well for the future generations, their payments will simply work. Their identities will be trusted. When they deal with financial data, it will move securely and with their consent. Their interactions with banks, governments, insurers, and businesses will feel seamless. And the greatest measure of our success, gentlemen, because the finance infrastructure is not the infrastructure that people admire, it is the infrastructure they trust. I can assure you, we build it well, we will not get any accolades from the future generation. If you're expecting for any accolades from Gen Z, you're hardly mistaken. But the fact is, if it becomes invisible, yours would be the best success story and a legacy that we leave behind for the future generations. And I can assure you, we are there, and India could actually provide the blueprint for the world to copy. Thank you, gentlemen. You've been a very kind audience.
Thank you so much. Captain, we do have some time to take questions from the audience. So if you have any questions at all, you can just raise your hands.
Thank you, sir. Indeed, very nice and insightful session this was. I would like to understand the framework that you gave. All the 9 layers were all culminating into the trust. Trust is a new currency now everywhere. So I just wanted to understand, with AI coming into picture, almost autonomously making business decisions, where does the accountability do you see sitting as a separate layer or across all these layers?
I think if you've seen the latest paper that has been issued by the Niti Aayog also, and also the MeitY, accountability has become a part of the board. It is no more a decision left to the AI. So as far as the regulations and the governance structure is concerned, the layer as far as the initial regulation part is already there. AI is not the decision maker. AI is only a solution proposer. It is the board. The accountability will always remain at the highest level, and that is how the government would like to get it implemented.
That's great to know, because that's very important.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? I suppose that's it. Thank you so much. Can we have a huge round of applause for him? Come on.